The most dangerous boats ever built are lurking in marinas near you, looking perfectly normal, but ready to plummet as fast as the anchors they carry. Picture yourself living the ultimate boating dream. Sunshine, calm waters, not a care in the world. But here's the shocking truth that could save your life. Some of these gleaming vessels harbor fatal design flaws that have turned countless dream days into absolute nightmares. However, these deadliest boats don't advertise their dangers, and customers suffered. Today we're exposing the most dangerous boats that should never have left the factory. When Bailiner dominated the affordable boat market in the 1970s and 1980s, buyers thought they were getting a steal. What they actually got was floating disasters waiting to happen. Since 1976, the Coast Guard has received 14 kinds of complaints, which has resulted in 3,257 Bayliners being recalled. The Bailiner Capri and Motor Yacht 3388 models exemplified everything wrong with cutting corners in boat construction. In some models, the batteries were mounted too close to the fuel lines, which can cause too much heat and potentially start a fire. Other issues that were identified were stability issues. This can be dangerous when used, and a stable boat is important for the safety of the boat's passengers. This is mainly seen in the late 80s Bailiner. The quality since the late 80s run has significantly improved. Some people say that the hatches sag when you step on them. The cheap construction meant these boats would crack under stress, leaving owners stranded in rough waters with vessels that were literally falling apart beneath them. Another problem is that they often used to come pre-installed with force motors, which were regularly considered unreliable. A lot of the materials used in the boat are not strong and are of lower quality. The seat cushions are easily damaged by water as well. Many people who are enthusiastic about boating consider Bayliners to be an introductory level boat. Before we dive deeper into these dangerous vessels, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you'll want to know about every single boat on this list before you even think about making your next purchase. Grady White built a reputation for quality, but their pre-1990s models tell a different story. Even prestigious brands can have dark chapters, and Grady White's early years were haunted by a silent killer: wood rot. The Grady White 204C Hatteras Overnighter looked impressive on paper, but poor sealing against saltwater corrosion turned these boats into slowly dissolving death traps. Wood rot in transoms and stringers wasn't just a cosmetic issue, it was a structural nightmare that could lead to catastrophic hull failure in rough seas. According to actual owner reports from Grady White forums, "I had to rebuild the transom on my 84 20-foot overnighter. I found that the water got into it from the plastic through hull drain in the well, and the fact at the top outer edge they put a piece of aluminium angle iron over the joint but the joint not sealed. Water gets in, it dries, and the bacteria goes to work. The transoms are wood core, but in 1998 or 99 they changed the wood core to a non-rot resistant wood material. Most likely a 91 Grady will have a water intrusion issue causing rot. Many owners discovered that the transom was soft in the area of the mounting screws and through bolts. There is evidence that the wood core of the transom is wet. The weakened hulls of these early Grady Whites turned routine rough weather into life-threatening emergencies. The insidious nature of wood rot made these boats particularly dangerous because the damage often went undetected until it was too late. Century boats from the 1970s and 1980s suffered from what could only be described as systematic construction failures. The Century Coronado models were known for their luxury styling and over-padded interior amenities, but beneath the surface lurked serious structural issues. According to vintage boat documentation, these boats used lots of woven roving in their fiberglass layup. While Century's Al Hegg claimed this was a quality feature, the reality was that many Century boats from this era suffered from fiberglass quality issues that led to delamination problems. The Century Coronado models became infamous among boaters for their combination of underpowered engines relative to their heavy construction. But the real danger lurked in the fiberglass itself. Delamination, where the layers of fiberglass separate, created boats that looked solid but were actually coming apart at the molecular level. In saltwater environments, these boats deteriorated more rapidly than expected, developing structural issues that could turn a peaceful day on the water into a fight for survival. The fitting failures were equally concerning, as hardware that looked secure could suddenly give way under stress. These weren't manufacturing defects isolated to individual boats. They were systematic flaws that affected multiple models from this era, particularly those built in the 1970s and early 1980s. Some boats earn nicknames that tell you everything you need to know about their reputation. In Charleston, South Carolina, Ranken boats from the 1980s and 1990s became known as Stinkin' Rankens, a name that perfectly captured the community's opinion of these troubled vessels. Ranken was started when Ralph Ranken bought Richard O. Halsey's Halsey Boat Company near Charleston, SC in 1958. The business grew until 1985, when the plant had to rebuild because of a disastrous fire. A second generation of sons and nephews eventually took over the operation of the business and ran it until 1995, when the Wachovia Bank foreclosed on it and sold its assets at auction to United Marine. The boats developed this reputation because they were historically underpowered. Ranken's boats were available for a modest price tag because they sacrificed engine quality. In fact, some boat owners reported replacing the entire engine 2 to 3 times over their lifetime of owning a Ranken boat. Many of Ranken's earlier models had issues with construction quality and durability. They weren't meant to handle rough ocean conditions, though they did hold up decently when used on lakes or flat water. As one boat dealer who worked with Ranken stated, a bigger piece of junk was never built. Even Bailiner looks good compared to those. When Ranken went out of business in 1995, owners were left with no manufacturer support. Parts became scarce, service became impossible, and these boats became increasingly unreliable with each passing year. The company's founders later started Sea Fox boats, but that didn't help existing Ranken owners. Also, if this is making you think twice about your next boat purchase, you're starting to understand why research is so critical. Hit that like button if you're learning something new, and let me know in the comments if you've had experience with any of these boats. Your stories could help other boaters avoid these dangerous vessels. But wait until you hear about the boats that were built specifically for speed, because that's where things get really terrifying. Go-fast catamarans represent the ultimate marriage of speed and danger. These boats prioritize velocity over virtually everything else, including the safety of everyone on board. The lightweight designs that make them fast also make them fundamentally unstable in rough conditions. The 2018 capsizing of the Fujian catamaran in 40-knot winds perfectly illustrates the inherent danger of these vessels. When you build a boat to be as light as possible for maximum speed, you create a craft that can be overwhelmed by conditions that wouldn't faze a properly built vessel. These boats are prone to flipping or losing control at high speeds, turning the thrill of speed into a nightmare of physics. The same design features that make them exciting in calm conditions make them death traps when the weather turns. The handling issues go beyond just rough water. At high speeds, these boats can become unpredictable, responding to waves and wind in ways that can catch even experienced operators off guard. When you're traveling at speeds that would make a race car driver nervous, there's no margin for error. Cigarette boats earned their reputation in the drug-running era of the 1980s, but their dangers extended far beyond their criminal associations. These boats are capable of reaching speeds of 80+ knots, but that extreme performance comes with equally extreme risks. The Cigarette Tirana, with its 2,700 horsepower, represents the pinnacle of this dangerous breed. That much power can overwhelm even experienced operators, creating situations where split-second decisions mean the difference between an adrenaline rush and a catastrophic accident. The phenomenon known as crabbing, where the boat slides sideways at high speed, is particularly dangerous in these vessels. Combine that with unstable takeoffs, and you have a recipe for disaster. The high risk of collisions or capsizing due to poor handling at speed makes these boats suitable only for the most skilled and reckless operators. When you're pushing the limits of what's physically possible on water, you're also pushing the limits of safety. These boats demand perfect conditions, perfect maintenance, and perfect operator skill, and even then, things can go catastrophically wrong in seconds. Some of the most insidious dangers come from boats that seem perfectly safe on the surface. Pre-2000s wake surf and ski boats harbored a silent killer that claimed lives without warning: carbon monoxide poisoning. The 1990s Mastercraft and Malibu models were linked to CO-related incidents due to their stern-heavy designs and poorly ventilated exhaust systems. During teak surfing, a popular activity where riders held onto the swim platform, carbon monoxide would build up in the low-speed, low-wind conditions. This invisible threat was particularly insidious because victims wouldn't realize they were being poisoned until it was too late. Carbon monoxide is odorless and colorless, and its effects can incapacitate someone before they even realize they're in danger. The combination of enclosed exhaust spaces and activities that kept people near the stern created a perfect storm for CO poisoning. What made this even more tragic was that the danger was completely preventable with proper ventilation design. Pontoon boats seem like the safest vessels on the water, wide, stable, and designed for leisurely cruising, but their party-friendly design masks some serious safety issues that have led to numerous accidents and fatalities. The wide, flat design that makes pontoons stable also makes them incredibly difficult to maneuver quickly. When you combine this poor maneuverability with the high rates of alcohol consumption associated with pontoon boating, you create a dangerous situation. Modern pontoons like the Godfrey models are well built, but they're still slow to respond in tight spaces or emergency situations. In crowded waterways, this can be the difference between a close call and a catastrophic collision. The accident statistics for pontoon boats are sobering, with alcohol-related incidents being disproportionately high. When your boat can't get out of its own way and your operator is impaired, disaster becomes inevitable. The trend of mounting oversized engines on small skiffs has created a new category of dangerous boat. When you put a 115 horsepower engine on a 16-foot skiff, you're creating a vessel that's fundamentally unbalanced and potentially deadly. The Mako Pro Skiff 19cc with oversized outboards exemplifies this problem. The massive engines cause severe bow rise during acceleration, completely obstructing the operator's visibility. When you can't see where you're going, every takeoff becomes a potential collision. These boats struggle in shallow waters, ironically the very conditions they're supposedly designed for. The weight of the oversized engine affects the boat's balance and handling in ways that can catch operators off guard. The risk of collisions due to impaired sightlines makes these boats dangerous not just to their operators, but to everyone else on the water. When a boat becomes airborne during acceleration, the operator is essentially flying blind. Personal watercraft, commonly known as jet skis, combine high speed and incredible maneuverability with operators who are often inexperienced, impaired, or both. This combination has created one of the most dangerous categories of watercraft. The Sea-Doo Fish Pro and similar models are involved in accidents at alarming rates, often due to reckless operation or wake jumping. The injuries associated with PWC accidents can be severe and often involve internal damage that might not be immediately apparent. The maneuverability that makes these craft fun also makes them unpredictable in the hands of inexperienced operators. Unlike boats, which give you time to think and react, PWCs respond instantly to every input, which can catch novice riders off guard. We're getting into the really dangerous territory now, so make sure you're subscribed because we're about to reveal boats that were so poorly designed they should never have been sold to the public. Drop a comment below about which of these boats surprised you the most. Sportcraft boats from earlier decades suffered from a fundamental design flaw that turned routine stops into potential sinking situations. The poor transom design allowed water to ingress, especially when the boat was at rest with weight concentrated in the stern. The 23-foot Sportcraft models were particularly notorious for flooding easily in rough conditions. What made this especially dangerous was that the problem was most severe when the boat was stopped, exactly when you'd be least prepared for an emergency. Imagine anchoring for lunch or fishing, only to discover that your boat is slowly filling with water simply because of how it's designed. The risk of sinking or swamping in choppy waters turned every outing into a potential rescue situation. These design flaws weren't immediately obvious to buyers, making them particularly insidious. The boats looked fine on the showroom floor, but their fundamental engineering problems only became apparent once they were on the water. Penan boats represented a perfect example of how good intentions can create dangerous situations. These boats were designed for freshwater use, but many owners took them into saltwater environments where they deteriorated rapidly due to poor corrosion resistance. The 1970s Penan runabout suffered from hull rot and weak fittings when exposed to saltwater. What made this particularly dangerous was that the deterioration often went unnoticed until structural failures occurred in rough seas or coastal environments. The tragedy of Penan boats wasn't that they were poorly built. They were actually decent boats when used as intended. The danger came from using them in environments they weren't designed for, turning reliable freshwater cruisers into saltwater death traps. This highlights a crucial point about boat safety. Even well-built boats can become dangerous when used outside their design parameters. The corrosion that affected these boats wasn't just cosmetic. It compromised the structural integrity of the entire vessel. Some boats earn reputation so bad that they become legendary among boaters for all the wrong reasons. Broadwater boats achieved this dubious distinction by creating vessels that were literally labeled as death traps by the boating community. The infamous poor construction and instability of Broadwater boats made them dangerous in even moderate conditions. The lightweight hulls were prone to cracking and capsizing, turning routine outings into life-threatening emergencies. What made Broadwater boats particularly dangerous was their combination of structural weaknesses and poor stability. These weren't boats that failed under extreme conditions. They were boats that could fail under normal use, making them unpredictable and unreliable when safety mattered most. The high risk of sinking or flipping in moderate conditions meant that Broadwater boat owners were essentially gambling with their lives every time they left the dock. This wasn't a case of pushing the limits, it was a case of boats that couldn't handle basic boating conditions. The tri-hull design was supposed to provide stability and a smooth ride, but Thompson's execution of this concept in the 1970s created boats that were punishing to ride and dangerous to operate. The excessive pounding and nosediving in waves made these boats nearly uncontrollable in choppy conditions. The 1970s Thompson MFG tri-hulls were particularly unstable in choppy lakes, exactly the conditions where you'd expect a well-designed boat to excel. The poor handling characteristics led to capsizing incidents and passenger injuries that could have been avoided with better design. The nosediving tendency was particularly dangerous because it was unpredictable. Operators never knew when their boat would suddenly dive into a wave, potentially throwing passengers overboard or causing the boat to submarine. These boats turned what should have been enjoyable rides into endurance tests that left passengers battered and potentially injured. The rough ride wasn't just uncomfortable, it was actively dangerous. One of the most dangerous boats are the Steelcraft boats from the 1960s and 1970s. These vessels combined every possible danger into one nearly unmanageable package. Steel hulls prone to rust and erratic handling that made them unpredictable in following seas. The 25 to 27-foot Steelcraft models were notorious for moving unpredictably in following seas, creating a constant risk of collisions or loss of control. When you can't predict how your boat will respond to waves, you're not just riding, you're gambling with physics. The steel hull construction created its own set of problems. Corrosion weakened the hulls over time, but unlike fiberglass boats where damage is often visible, steel boats could be compromised internally while still looking solid from the outside. The combination of unpredictable handling and structural deterioration made these boats dangerous in multiple ways. Even if you could handle the erratic behavior in following seas, you never knew if the hull itself would hold up under stress. The poor stability characteristics meant that these boats required constant attention and skill to operate safely. In emergency situations, when quick, predictable responses are crucial, these boats were more likely to make bad situations worse.